Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cricket Unfiltered. I'm Menners, and Bazley is back, fresh from plucking miracle catches at Optus Stadium. I'm joined by James Bazley from the Adelaide Strikers and the Queensland Bulls. James, welcome back. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Menners. It's good to be back on Cricket Unfiltered with you. I'm feeling great, thank you. Big Bash is wrapped up, so I look forward to talking a bit about that and lots of cricket since we last spoke. So it's going to be a good app.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you back. It was good to see you out there running around in the blue for the Strikers and, taking your annual leave from Cricket Unfiltered. But, you'll have to apply for more leave if you get picked up by any more tournaments.
Sure.
So I wanted to talk about your reflections on the Big Bash, but I think it's first I want to look at the Test summer and some of the fallout from Australia's defeat at the Gabba. And I have to say, it was a fantastic test match on Sunday. I was so happy. I know Australia lost, but Shamar Joseph, that was a great performance. And sometimes, I think it's good for Australia to lose because you then appreciate the wins. But then the day just went absolutely downhill because the Poms beat the Indians. And, everyone was talking about, how good Test cricket is. I was miserable about the Poms beating India. It was very tough to watch.
So you were more miserable about the Poms beating India than Australia losing?
Absolutely. Yep, definitely. It's not a likable bunch, the Poms. So
you're still holding on from that Ashes series last year, aren't you? The best.
Yeah, I've still got a lot of bad blood there. But I mean, the fact that England were trailing India by 190 runs in the first innings, the target was 230 for India, and England won by 28 runs. Pope scored 196 runs, and debutant Hartley took 7 for 62 on debut. Now, imagine how full of themselves, Baz and Stokesy are going to be now. Like, if they thought they were saving cricket before, if they go on to win this series in India, they will be insufferable.
It will be huge, won't it? It will be huge. I mean, it's a good win, but it's only the first test, isn't it? Bowling first on that wicket seemed like it was a nice advantage to have, but there was a great fight back from the England batters' second innings to get to a nice lead. Ollie Pope, exceptional innings. The way they played the spin through there was amazing. And then Hartley was exceptional on debut, and they all kind of chipped in. It's a good test match win, but let's see how India bounce back because they definitely will.
I'm glad you've said that because it is a 5-test series, so there's plenty of time for India to come back in their home conditions. I guess the concerning things for India is Virat Kohli's missing the next test still, and Ravindra Jadeja and KL Rahul are both injured from the second test. So India are a little bit vulnerable, but I'm still, I'm a massive Indian fan now. Like, I'm going to be in blue watching the games. The blue fireworks that went off when Australia won the World Cup. I'm going to have them in the backyard every time India win a game now because it just can't go on.
I think that'll be the difference then. I think they're hot favourites because of that.
Exactly. So looking at the Test World Championship table after Australia's loss, and this is one of the sort of vagaries of the table. Australia is still on top. They've played 10 Test matches. They've won 6. They've lost 3, drawn 1. So their winning percentage is 55%. So they're on top. South Africa are second on the table. They've played 2 Test matches. They've won 1 and they've lost 1. Yet they get second spot. New Zealand are in third spot and Bangladesh fourth spot, both with 1 win and 1 loss. So I guess that's where the Test Championship probably needs to develop a bit more. Some teams are playing a lot more matches than others. It seems a bit strange.
Yeah, I can't get my head around that actually, Menace, that you said it. It's obviously a real unique criteria and process to reward the points in that system, isn't it? But I mean, it's probably going to be hard in the future to have, every test nation playing the same amount of tests. I think there always will be some differences, scheduling and the difference between formats and stuff like that. But that's interesting to know the criteria there, and unique and interesting, isn't it? Do you know anything? Do you know how it's kind of rewarded? Like how?
Well, they do it on, they have the Future Tours program, and the minimum is 2 test series, and you have to play, you're drawn against certain teams in the 2-year cycle, and you have to play them in a minimum of 2 tests, and it's determined whether it's home or away. But then you have the things like, Australia plays a 5-test Ashes series. We play we're going to play 5 tests against India next summer. So some teams are playing more, and then they just weight it on win percentage, but it just seems a bit strange. On the bottom of the table, though, is Sri Lanka with 2 matches and 2 losses, and England is second from the bottom, 6 matches, 3 losses. 2 losses, 3 wins. I'll get some of these right eventually. England down the bottom, which is heartening. Australia at the top, but a long way to go. And that's where. So the win against the loss against the West Indies in that final Test match, it may come back to bite Australia at the end of this Test championship cycle. If they just miss on the final, they'll look back at the points they didn't get at the Gabba and think, what might have been. I guess that's the bigger picture for the loss on Sunday. Yeah,
exactly right. I think in saying that, they wouldn't be thinking about that now, would they? They'd be thinking how they're going to brush themselves off and go and play a really good series in New Zealand. So let's hope that it doesn't come back to bite us when it comes to the World Test Championship. I think there's good cricket ahead for us, so I believe it won't. But credit to the West Indies as well for, causing a big upset at the Gabba.
Oh, absolutely. And there's been some fallout from the Gabba. Now, when you're at the Adelaide Strikers, your assistant coach, Tim Payne, great character, and he's got a radio station a radio show in Tasmania, and he wasn't very happy with some of the Australian players barracking for the West Indies on Sunday. Have a listen.
Performance. And I just don't like it. It feels a bit uncomfortable. It's like, why are you barracking against your team that you played in?
So that was Tim Payne there, having a go at some of the commentators. Like players, people like Adam Gilchrist, and Adam Gilchrist was like hugging Brian Lara when Australia lost. So I get where Tim Payne's coming from. He's just retired. He was the Australian captain. It probably feels a little bit uncomfortable for him to start barracking for other teams. But I can also understand if you're a commentator and a spectator, you can objectively step back and detach that patriotism and go, this is great for cricket. This is a great story. I'm disappointed we lost, but I'm really happy for people like Brian Lara, who've been coming here for 30 years and haven't seen a win. So I don't know. I like Tim Payne. I think he's very interesting on the radio. I think he might have got that one wrong.
Yeah, I think I can understand both points. I think Tim's great, and he's only fresh out of the game still, isn't he? So that's where that passion comes through is understanding that he led that team, he led that Australian team in a tough time, and got them back to where they needed to be. And it hasn't been long since he's been out of it. So he would probably in a way, it probably feels like a bit of a loss to him sometimes, and an unacceptable loss. So I can understand he's fresh out the game. He's still passionate. It's a team that he led. And then I can also understand guys have been out the game a lot longer than Tim. More from a spectator's point of view, I guess, understanding that probably going into that series in that Test match, it was like, this is going to be a bit of a whitewash. Suddenly we have a really good game on our hands at the Gabba. And that probably just engaged them a little bit more. In saying that probably engaged them a little bit more, took them by a little bit of a surprise, and suddenly they had a really good game of cricket. And they were, supportive. I don't think they were barracking for the West Indies. I just think they were supportive of a nation who did something special and haven't done for a while. So I think they're both a little bit different opinions coming from a little bit different, I guess, life stages, perspectives in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way Payne has a crack on the radio. I think he's really interesting.
Yeah.
He's very opinionated. He's actually, radio show is one of the better ones in the country in the morning. So good on him. And then as well, like Shamar Joseph and the West Indies, they bowled really well on that last day. Like, we'll talk about Australia's batting lineup, but just in isolation, I think Australia were just beaten on the day with a great performance. There wasn't a lot of terrible shots. It wasn't like Australia had a real shocker. I mean, there was some genuine corker of deliveries from Joseph.
Absolutely, there was, and that needs to probably be, the credit that needs to be given to him and his spell. The story around Shamar Joseph has come out, which is also really cool and captivating. And not only that, he sounded like he had a bit of a broken toe on the day. So a lot of things to like about the story behind the victory, the story behind him and the bowler. But as you said, I think that Australia were outdone by some really good bowling on that day, some corkers and special spell, and it got him home.
Now, Shamar Joseph said the team doctor gave him a few magic pills to get him on the field.
Yeah.
Have you ever, been given a pill to just get through the pain?
No, I have to work out what those magic pills are that suddenly make you bowl 145 rockets and
With a broken toe.
Yeah, and broken toe, knock stumps over. That must be a serious pill. That.
I was thinking it might be something like Panadine Ford, or something with a lot of codeine in it, because when Joseph
I thought it might have been injected. Like I thought he must have had an injection in there, maybe.
He said he had pills. He said a couple of pills before he went on, a couple more at fine leg when he was fielding. They gave him some more. Okay. So I reckon it was like some Panadine Ford or something super strong. Maybe the drug test will come out and he'll be rubbed out of the game for a year. But I'm joking, of course. But he was, he was a bit loopy at the press conference afterwards. Those pills with a lot of codeine can send you a bit haywire. Like he said he's not going to play T20 cricket. He said he's always going to be available for the West Indies. And he's not going to take the big T20 dollars. But I just wonder, when that contract is put in front of him, hey, come and play in this country and we'll pay you, a few, say $500,000. He'll just go, oh, no. So it's interesting.
Time will tell.
Yeah. And so speaking on the theme of being a bit too chummy, a mate of mine texted me because after the win, Pat Cummins put a photo of him and Joseph that swapped shirts. And this cantankerous friend of mine was like, oh, look how chummy Cummins is with the opposition. Surely he should be hurting after a big loss. And I wrote back to my friend that, you can still be hurting and exchange shirts and take a photo with someone. Like I think that's one of the good things about Cummins is that he does understand the bigger picture, and he is able to put aside, his own personal anguish at losing. I'm telling you, it would have been there. Like, there's no doubt he would have been pissed that they didn't win. That's the first test he's ever lost at home since being captain. So I think you can put that aside and still go into the dressing room and go, well done, mate. Here's my shirt. Loved what you did.
Yeah, I agree. I think it shows really good character. And what I think people don't understand is that these West Indies guys, coming from a very different place than the Australian cricketers, but I think they would idolise the Australian cricket team. You know what I mean? They would idolise Pat Cummins. They would idolise these guys that they're playing against. So for Pat to then show that kind of character is huge, because these guys are, the heroes to West Indies probably. They're thinking far out, I'm playing Smith and Cummins and all these guys. We're coming up against them. And to then go and show some character, obviously build a bit of relationship in there and, give them credit the way they're played. That says a lot to, one, about Pat Cummins, I think's character off the field and ability to lose well, and two, probably about, helping those guys on their careers a little bit, given that he's probably a role model to all those guys in that team.
Absolutely. It's just good sportsmanship. And, I think it's really clear, and you can probably speak to this more being a professional cricketer, but you can still be ultra bloody competitive on the field and really want to win and give your best, and still come off the field and be mates with people like that. That's in fact, sometimes when you're against your mates, you're even more competitive.
Absolutely you are. But yeah, definitely agree, Venice.
So I guess the other thing that's been discussed, and there's been a lot of talk about the inconsistency of Australia's batting lineup over this summer. So going back to the series against Pakistan and then into the two against the West Indies. And I've got some figures here. So the leading run scorer across the 5 tests was Mitch Marsh with 380 runs at an average of 54 with 4 half centuries. So no player topping 400 runs over 5 tests is probably disappointing for the batting lineup. And the fact that there were only 2 centuries across the summer, one from Warner, who's now retired, and one from Head, that I think the number of centuries would also be concerning, because centuries are what win games of cricket.
Yeah, that's right. Big centuries, big partnerships, isn't it? I think you're right. I think there was there would have been a few half centuries and some 80s and stuff, but not the big hundreds that we usually see in our test summers in our conditions, isn't it? So I'm sure, they would all be disappointed a little bit, as you said, that they didn't quite have their best stuff. But they'll bounce back.
Yes. And so just looking down the figures, Uzun Khawaja, 359 runs at just under 40 with 2 half centuries across the summer. He got a lot of starts, a lot of scores in the 30s and 40s. Steve Smith, 314 runs. Warner, 299 runs. He's now retired. Labuschagne, 226 runs at just over 28. Travis Head, just an even 200 runs at 25 across the long summer. And I think we did see a little bit of the fatigue, the mental fatigue, maybe catch up with the batting order this summer, because last year was full of the most intense cricket imaginable. The tour to India, the Ashes, the World Cup. I mean, that is draining stuff. And to have 3 of those back to back to back, I do think it had an effect on this team. It's not to make excuses, but I'm looking for reasons why, a star-studded batting lineup with many of these players averaging, 40s, high 40s, some over 50, why they perform like this. And, I sort of think that they should have a break. And I think Crash Craddock said, even Marnus, who played a Shield game after the World Cup, said to a player, maybe I shouldn't have played this game. And if Marnus is saying that, who plays every game imaginable, maybe it just did catch up with them.
Yeah, as you said, it was a massive year for them, wasn't it? Like high intensity cricket, physical, mental, lot of high emotions through the success that they had. Ashes in the World Cup, far out, yeah. So there has to be a bit of fatigue, the level that comes into it, as you said, Menas. I totally agree. And they're human beings. You know what I mean? It does catch up with them. They obviously carry themselves extremely well. They know it's part of the job, the travel and the playing a lot, and they wouldn't change it for a world, I'm sure. But potentially they were just under a little bit more fatigue. And as a batter, you know what I mean? It only has to be a little bit where your decision making isn't just quite right, even on one ball. That's at Test cricket level. I'm sure it's that. It can be down to those tiny, small margins of error in a way. So, I agree. Fatigue would have come into it.
What do you think of the move to put Smith up the top and Green at 4? Did you like it?
Yeah, I did like it. I think Green is an incredible player. He has the numbers on the board in terms of Shield cricket, the evidence that, he scores big hundreds. He obviously got 100 in Sri Lanka. He bowls fast. He bowls handy overs. He's a great fielder. He needs to be in the team, and he can be in the team for a very long time, can't he? So I think that's great. I guess it was either put him at 4 or maybe open the batting with him. So they were the kind of options, and I probably preferred the option of having him at 4, understanding that Smith's incredible and Smith can open the batting because he's that good, and he would really embrace and be stimulated by that challenge. So we've only seen it for 2 tests, but I think we need to see it for a bit longer, and I think it can work.
And Andrew McDonald was asked after the test match, if he's happy with the shape of the batting lineup, and there'll be no changes. They've got 2 tests in New Zealand next month. They're really set on this batting lineup, and then we've got 5 tests against India next year. But I mean, they could tinker with the order before next summer if Australia were to have some bad results in New Zealand. But looking over the last year, I guess the one area of concern is Marnus Labuschagne at 3. 16 test matches in the last year, 944 runs at an average of 35 with 106 50s. So McDonald backed him in the press conference, but he would probably be disappointed with those figures. And it was interesting, Mark Wall made some comments about a technical flaw he noticed in Marnus, that he was coming across the ball when defending short of a leg deliveries. He was getting a bit squared up, sort of coming across the line of the ball rather than through the line of the ball. But it goes back to what I said before. I think some of these players will really benefit from this break coming up now. And I think Marnus is one of those, because he tries too hard sometimes.
How long is the break that they get to have?
Well, I think there's a month until they go to New Zealand. But then, I mean, I'm sure they'll play some of the Shield stuff. But as you would well know, the intensity and it's not quite the same furnace as playing Test cricket. So maybe he can just have a few weeks tinkering with his game at Shield level, and that'll be good for him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a good size break, I think, for sure. Yeah, well, I think with Man is that we're probably so used, or people are so used to him averaging 65, 70 almost there for a few years, is that when he, had a bit of a leaner period, it was still averaging 35, which is, it's not dire straits at all. So just understanding that, it's been a little bit leaner, I guess, but we're also coming off the back of probably comparing him to being, averaging 65, 70, which is just kind of unheard of. So I hope people understand that a little bit. He'll be tinkering a little bit. I know he'll be tinkering a little bit. He always does, and that's one of his strengths that he does, is he knows his game inside out. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to tinker. He enjoys that process. So he will be tinkering now, and he will score test hundreds very soon. I'm sure of it.
Good, backing your fellow Bulls teammate. Yeah, I said this after the test on the weekend. I just think the batting lineup is kind of a bit on notice now. I think they'll be under the microscope, and at some point, Marnus will just have to take an uptick of form, because you need your number 3. You're sort of wanting averaging over 40 consistently. But that's sort of there's certainly no panic stations from the Australian cricket team and McDonald, but I think they need to win. Like that's just the way it goes. Like it's all hunky dory until you start losing, and then everyone starts pointing fingers. What was, though, extraordinary this summer, and I think this is a summer to celebrate our bowling attack. Hazelwood took 25 wickets, Cummins 24 wickets, Lyon 21 wickets, and Stark 20 wickets. They were just incredible to watch. They further underlined how good they are. And, I think this was their summer. While the batters took a bit of a back seat, we saw some just awesome bowling from all 4.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible bowling from all 4, and how consistent they've been for such a long time, and even how resilient their bodies have been, is incredible testament to their physicality, their preparation, recovery, their professionalism. So they're an incredible bowling attack. There's guys sitting outside it that are also incredible bowlers that can't get in, and that's a good sign of how good they are. And I think they're a big part of us winning test matches.
Absolutely. And I think, and I've said this consistently for a while, I think this Australian cricket team is, if you look at them across all 3 formats, they're just a great team. The fact they win a T20 World Cup, win a Test Championship, win a 50-over World Cup. They're a great cricket team, but I think they're not in isolation a great Test team. Like they're just excellent, one of very good one. But if you look at their results in the last year, they're just a very good Test team. But if you put it all in together, like what makes last year so special for Australia is doing all that in 1 year, and I think that you got to give them credit for that. And, their Test form, I think, is pretty consistent. It's led by a great bowling attack, and the batting is just, a little bit hit and miss, but that's some of the charm. I mean, Travis Head can score 2 golden ducks in a row or hit 100 off 80 balls and win you a match. Like that's the way he plays.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
So great summer. Did you enjoy the test summer? I mean, I know you were busy playing and stuff, but I sort of look back on it and people thought I was going to be disappointing, but Australia won 4 tests. They only lost 1. We saw some, couple of young quicks burst onto the scene. Amir Jamal for Pakistan, Shamar Joseph for the West Indies. David Warner got his glorious farewell. Nathan Lyon returned. Like, I think it was actually a much better test summer than people were expecting.
Yeah, it was good, and it looked like there was good crowds as well, wasn't there? Good crowds, good cricket wickets, some good spells of bowling that you couldn't turn off because it was interesting, with the wickets maybe giving a little bit of help to the bowlers. So good conditions as well. It wasn't real flat, docile Australian hot batting conditions. It was a bit in it for both, and some good crowds. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good to see.
Was good indeed. So now they get a bit of a break. Speaking of breaks, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back to talk about the Big Bash.
Straight up in the air. Man gets tight on the rope. Is this the win for the Strikers? Is this the win for the Strikers? I think it is the win for the Strikers. On an incredible night, Bazley finishes it off with absolute beauty.
Welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. That was my co-host today, James Bazley, pulling off an absolute ripper at Optus Stadium to end the Scorchers campaign. And must have been sweet to do that after losing the Big Bash final last summer there and then going back there and getting a win with the Strikers.
Yeah, it's hard to win over there for sure. So it did feel really special, and it was a convincing performance. Obviously, we hit them with a lot of spin that night and just kind of took the pace off their batters, which I guess loved the pace, and just a really fun, good night. And yeah, I haven't heard the crowd that quiet for a while. So that was really enjoyable. Obviously, they're a special team. They're a great crowd. They're tough to beat there. So that makes it more rewarding, I guess, more special.
Yeah, and you were that viral moment of the Big Bash that night, that catch, juggling away on the boundary. It was a pretty good catch. Do you want to talk us through it?
Oh, mate, I'll take it. That's for sure. It was a good catch. It was great to finish the game like that, I guess. Yeah, it definitely went up. I knew I was obviously in a hot spot with Boise Bowe on his leg spin. Cooper Connolly needed to hit sixes, and he definitely can. So I knew I was going to get a ball come my way. Obviously a bit of a miss hit, and all kind of went that way. I think, yeah, we do practice catches like that. I know maybe 5-6 years ago, a catch like that, everyone went crazy. But now it's almost like you see a lot of those catches, don't you? And they're quite clinical. They're quite expected to be taken. So that's why we practice it in training with the ropes and with the drills like that. As we catch, we practice the technique and staying calm and that ability to go over the rope and come back. But it's nice to pull it off.
Yeah, Michael Neeson makes a habit of doing them. He's taken some great catches.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is you always see the other boundary runner running towards them to be ready for it a lot more than you used to. There's always someone there waiting for it.
Yeah.
So it's a big picture stuff. From the outside, it looked like the Big Bash had even been more rejuvenated than it was last year. Like last year was a bounce back from the tough COVID years, and we saw good crowds last year, but it felt to me watching that it even had more intensity. Obviously a shorter schedule, less games, but as a player, could you feel the buzz?
Big time. Yeah, certainly felt that way too, Manners. Great crowds. Shortened tournament. We played 10 games as opposed to 14. Obviously, the intensity was up from the first game. It needed to be, you know what I mean? Teams needed to win out the blocks. So you couldn't. Well, I know, our season, we lost 4 in a row and came back really strong. But yeah, you needed to play well and come out the blocks well and get on a roll in a way. So that created a real high intensity level of cricket. Crowds came through, and it was a great spectacle. So I'd agree with that. It felt like it was, bigger than last year and in a really good place.
When you were 9-4, I decided not to message you for a while. It's like,
we won our first game. Obviously, we had a washout, and then we won, and then we lost 4 in a row, and then we came back strong, and that was always the plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did he plan lose 4 in a row?
No, it wasn't. But yeah,
I guess the only discussion around this Big Bash was maybe there needs to be something done with the overseas draft. And I know there was actually some stuff coming out of the strikers that it feels like the overseas draft in the Big Bash's sense is a little bit restrictive because that clubs need to be able to negotiate with overseas players, offer them multi-year deals so that they can actually stick around for the whole tournament. Because, we saw a lot of the a lot of the overseas players leave for the back end of the competition for the finals. And there was discussion that if clubs could negotiate more freely, maybe there'd be a chance to keep players for the whole season. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's probably something that needs to be, spoken about around now. I like the draft. I think that's cool. And, is it a negotiation issue or is it a scheduling issue? You know what I mean? If you're going to negotiate with players to try and keep them for longer, does that mean that they're not going to be able to go to the ILT 20 and play in that league, which they won't want to do? So, these players will want to play in the Big Bash and the ILT 20. Like, they want to play both. So is it more the crossover that's the issue if they're going to want to play both? Probably. Can we squeeze the final series, a bit closer? Obviously, we had the Perth test where we didn't have Big Bash for a while. At the Strikers, we had a 10-day break between round 1 and 2.
Ridiculous.
We don't need a 10-day break in a Big Bash tournament. So can you get the finals in before the ILT 20 starts, where these players are going to want to go? That's a good high-paying tournament with a lot of overseas players. So I'm not sure the negotiation part of it is going to be the solution. It's if you're going to keep those players all the way to the final, I think you need to play the final before the ILT 20 starts.
Yeah, and Todd Greenberg, the ACA president, was talking about that. I think you're right that there'll be more traditional test summers coming up, and there won't be that gap to play a Perth test, and therefore you can even further compact the Big Bash. And you might have this great scenario where the Sydney test ends, and you've got maybe sort of 2 weeks of competition, including the finals. So you end sort of around that 20th of January when the ILT 20 is sort of kicking off. And then you'll have the double whammy, you have your overseas players, and then you get maybe, the test stars back, 6 or 7 of them into the club. So we could actually have a scenario in the next 2 years where the competition at the pointy end is super strong, which I think is what people want, because I'm like watching the Sixers play in the finals. I'm like, why is Jack Edwards all of a sudden open the batting? Oh, that's right, James Vince is gone. And, I just think it would be better for the competition if they can stay till the end.
Yeah, I think there's a solution there, and I think they can work through it. As you said, it's more of a scheduling and, working out the best fit.
So tell me, how was the move to the Strikers?
Yeah, it was very enjoyable, thank you. A lovely place to play. Obviously, first of all, the Adelaide Oval was extremely special. The fans are great there. The facilities are amazing. It was a great group of guys, Manners. The coaches were good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the change that was. It's an easy city to live in. It's a great city to live in. There's enough there to do. And so, yeah, it was really good. The move was really good.
Oh, that's good. And everything I've seen and heard and spoken to, like Jason Gillespie's a great leader as coach. He's very empowering to the players. I mean, you wouldn't have worked with him that closely before. What was that like?
Yeah, Jason was great. He creates a relaxed environment. He creates a very inclusive environment, I'd like to call it. And I enjoyed, working under him. He had good assistant coaches around him, which were great too. Tim Payne, Carl Hooper, Ryan Harris. So it was a great group of stuff. yeah, good group of staff as well, which really helped. And Dizzy kind of sits above that and likes to create, a nice, relaxed, inclusive environment, which is cool, and empower other coaches as well, I think, which is important.
Was it good for your game to get some fresh eyes on it and a new environment?
Yeah, it definitely was. I enjoyed working with Carl Hooper from a batting point of view, talking the game with him. He loves the game of cricket, as you know, as you can see. So great to talk cricket with him. Ryan Harris had, he'd been at the Bulls. So I knew how he worked, and he's a passionate coach who also loves the game and, knows my bowling, knows a bit about my bowling, and is good for the bowlers too. And Tim Payne was awesome for the same reasons, that was also that face who'd just kind of just been outside the game for not so long. So I found Payne to be really relatable in that way, and he could sometimes see why guys were doing things in a way because he'd probably been there himself. So he was that real relatable guy who hadn't been out the game for very long, who's captained his country and had some really good input leadership wise and tactically wise. So it was a good group of staff.
Yeah, and a great performance from the team. You talk about losing 4 in a row, and then heading into the finals with a wet sail, beating the Scorchers at Perth. Getting to that final 3 of the tournament. I think it's the challenge of the game before the grand final. I always get them confused.
Yeah.
To get to the challenger, just such a great performance. And then you came up against a rampaging Josh Brown on the Gold Coast. Now, you obviously play all your cricket in Queensland, so you would know the big fella pretty well, I imagine.
Yeah. Not the first time I've seen a rampaging Josh Brown, for sure.
Yes, and when you were coming in there and he was just smoking balls all around Heritage Stadium in the Gold Coast, were you just thinking, what were you thinking? Because he is a bit of a beast.
He is a beast, definitely. As I said, I've seen it, more than just that night. Brownie was dangerous, and you could tell that, I guess, he hadn't had a huge impact through the tournament. And I know the game before, it was obviously a very hard conditions, and he was swinging and missing a lot. It looked like he came into this game with a real measured approach of, staying still and giving himself a little bit of time. And then kind of the wicket did play a lot better that night, as we expected it would. And once he found out it was quite true, and then once Josh Brown gets away, he's super hard to stop in those kind of moods, and played some ridiculous cricket shots. He's such a strong man. And sometimes, it's tough to know where to bowl to him. He had some luck, and you need that. Couple of balls going up and landing and whatnot. But he put on a show and, took the game completely away from us.
I imagine he belts around grade attacks in Brisbane grade cricket on those small grounds.
He has done, yes, definitely.
So what a story, though. Now I think he's been signed in the Bangladeshi Premier League. I mean, this is sort of, a beautiful story. I don't know if you saw the images of his mum at the ground and, having to get time off work to go to the grand final. I mean, it was nice. It's nice to see him go from, I wouldn't say rags to riches in just overnight. Like in a couple of knocks, all of a sudden he's on the T20 circuit. I mean, do you think he's got the game to sort of adapt to different conditions? You would have seen it, or what will the challenges be from what you've seen?
I think the challenges will be that, won't it? It'll be adapting to different conditions and staying true to yourself and your game, when things aren't quite going your way, which I think Josh does really well. Is, he goes out and he just loves hitting sixes, and he tries to hit sixes. He knows that that's not that might be a little bit inconsistent at times, but he also knows is that when he gets it right, he gets 140 off 60 balls, and he wins himself, wins his whole team a final. So understanding that, staying true to himself, and hopefully he gets around, coaches and everyone who back him in with that same philosophy. And also in saying that, he gets better at what he needs to get better at, and he makes mistakes and learns from them and grows. And he can be great.
Is he is he in the Queensland squad?
He's not contracted in the Queensland squad. He obviously comes to our trainings and he's around a bit. I'm not sure he has I don't want to speak out of place for Josh, but I don't know how much he loves the longer form of the game.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask him that, but I know that he's he smacks that he loves T20. He has a picture in mind, of being a T20 circuit, player. So maybe that's like, more of a Tim David mold where he's, saying no to the longer format, and he's going strictly white ball, shorter format, which is, nowadays in cricket, it can be a really fruitful career. And he might just go that way. There's no reason why he can't play, one-day cricket for Queensland, however, and I'm sure he'll get his chance to do that as well.
And even now, it doesn't even, if the test selectors think you're good enough, they'll pick you whether you've played, a lot of first-class cricket or not. The landscape's really changed. Yeah, because what I think is, and this is no disrespect, but I think, him being in a professional environment for, a little while, and being able to work on his fitness and stuff, and this is, not a knock on him, but, you could tell he was really gassed by the end of his, he was even gassed when he got to 50 at the SCG. Like him being able to really concentrate on his fitness, for example, I think could really take his game just up that step. I mean,
yeah, definitely. And that's what, I guess, as you said, being around a professional environment more, would do that, creates an environment where you can do things like that, which is a privilege. So yeah, wish him all the best, Brownie. He's a great guy as well off the field. He's relaxed. Obviously, the story about him making cricket bats. He makes good cricket bats, and he's done great for Cooper Cricket. He's really put them on a map through Big Bash, which is also a great story, great to see. So, wish him all the best.
So what's the debrief like when you finish the season at the Strikers? The boys sit around with you, Dizzy and the coaches, and say, okay, this is what we want you to work on for next year. Well, how does that work?
We haven't had any specific individual kind of meetings or debriefs. I'm sure that they, might happen, or as a player myself, I can get feedback. I can definitely get feedback if I'd like to. The debrief that night was very positive. Making sure we understand that we, weren't in a great place halfway through the season, and the way we came back and got on a roll and got to, third place was very positive. Beating Perth in Perth and doing things like that made us believe and understand, we can beat any team anywhere on our night. So taking that away, and then individually, it's firstly up to you to reflect, isn't it, and understand where you could have been a bit better and what you'd like to do differently or work on, and then getting feedback from coaches if you want like that, and then moving on. But your fond memories, like we were, as you said, we lost 4 in a row, but there was things we needed to polish up, definitely. But Shorty was great, because Shorty and Dizzy, there was obviously disappointment there, but they did actually always reiterate the fact that, we were really close to playing really good cricket. You know what I mean? There was a couple of things that didn't go our way, and we were losing. We had a couple of close losses. The messaging was really positive around, what, we're really close here. And that was really positive. That held us together. And then we knew that, all right, well, let's just execute a little bit better, and we can get on a roll, and then we, can get on a roll. So that was really good leadership from Shorty and the staff through there, just to mentor. Didn't go all pear-shaped.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the figures, and it seemed like from your performances, you didn't get a lot of time in the middle. Like when you came in, it was always just start slogging most of the time. So, and then you bowled a lot of tough overs. A lot of tough overs when the batters were going. So it wasn't an easy campaign.
No, it wasn't an easy campaign personally. I think, I didn't get a heap of opportunity with the bat. More so than not, it was because of how well we were batting. Like I never even batted at the Adelaide Oval once, because we'd only lose 3 wickets or 4 wickets. So that's a really good thing. Obviously there was plenty of time, or a couple of times coming in at 7 where, it felt like it was a lot to do. I know last game we needed, 19 runs and 19 runs and over, kind of thing. So that's the nature of batting 7. It's that it's quite inconsistent outcome based. It's just more about how can you make a little bit of an impact, however that looks like, and then getting when you get your moment and you get your night, maybe come in a bit earlier, etc., or really finishing games off. And then, yeah, the bowling, as you said, tough overs there, but you got to be able to bowl them, and they're what I enjoy bowling. And yeah, my execution wasn't quite up to my standard. I think that's made me so good, is just my execution in terms of being so good at length control and accuracy, whereas probably one or two bad balls and over, where, as you know, on these grounds and these players, you can't miss by too much. So that's the takeaways for me. But there was also plenty of good overs and plenty of good wickets in there too.
Absolutely. And what I enjoyed was you're so calm and relaxed on this podcast, but a few times you were really bloody fired up, which was great to see. You were right into it. So what was it like? Obviously you came up against your old team, the Heat, and then they go on and they win the title. I guess mixed emotions. I mean, you've got a lot of mates in that team, I'm sure. Yeah,
definitely. I think coming up against them, I really wanted to, beat them and get into that final like you do any team. But yeah, once playing them, they obviously defeated us. Then, I really thought that, this team's going to be hard to beat even in Sydney. It's great to see from a off the field personal, friendship point of view. It's good I'm happy for my mates. As you said, there's a lot of mates in there, and, credit where credit's due. They had such a good season. They're deserving winners. They won 9 out of 10 league games, finished top of the table, lost a couple, but came back well and won the final. So just deserving winners. The Brisbane Heat this year. Happy for my mates. And, that bowling attack is special. And I think really carried them there from my conversations I've had. As Munro was really good captain, really good to play under, create a great environment for them. He obviously left, but he had a big impact early. And then Josh Brown turned it on last couple of games, and their bowlers. So deserving winners. They had a great season.
One of your mates, Matty Renshaw, had a good final. Here he is on the SCG.
There he is.
I've got to say, they were stoked. I mean, they should be. They won the Big Bash.
Yeah.
But, I think there was a real sense of joy from the Heat guys, because, it's been a long time since they won a Big Bash, and been so close a couple of times, especially, last year. There was a real nice vibe around, and, that's coming from a New South Welshman talking about Queenslanders. So
there you go. Must have been good.
Sorry to bring that up, that photo.
No.
Could be you next year. Hope it's you next year at the SCG with the
absolutely
with the trophy.
Yeah. Good chance.
So that was a big bash. I guess finally, and I've said this, I've been finally won over to the power surge. I've been dead against the power surge, almost as much as I'm against the Poms. And I sat down with Trent Woodhill, who's kind of a technical director of Big Bash. He advises on things like this. And he explained to me why they have the power surge and why it's different in international cricket and why it works well for the Big Bash. And I'm now just neutral. Like, if they took the power surge away, I wouldn't care, but I also don't hate it.
That's good manners.
He just explained that, in domestic, especially in the Big Bash, batting lineups aren't as long. So if you have a 6-over power surge and you lose a few wickets early, it can really kill up a contest. But unlike, say, the IPL and international leagues where they bat down to, 9 or 10, they don't have such a dramatic effect on the result, early wickets.
So, it's a good way to put it.
Growth. James, growth.
That's good growth from you, mate. Good growth from you.
I need to think about the Poms, maybe get there eventually.
No,
all right, I want to wrap this up. Just a quick look at there's Australia are playing West Indies in some one-day international starting this week, and then they move into a T20 series. But there's a few players being called up. The first one, I want to ask you about Xavier Bartlett, your Bulls teammate. What did he offer?
X offers a lot, definitely. Obviously, he had a great Big Bash. Big X, a great Big Bash, wasn't it? And you can see what he offers from a bowling point of view. But great, he's just a great man, X.
Is he fast medium? So is he about that 135, 140?
Yeah. He's not rapid. he'll probably build pace. He's had some back issues, but he's fit and firing now. He swings the ball. Obviously, you saw that he had some death success in his death overs in the Big Bash with some slow balls. So he offers a lot like that. Obviously, Australia see him as an emerging player. They see him, see this as a bit of a series to maybe give him a bit of a look into it and build him up. So, but off the field, he's a great man. He's funny. He works really hard, loves the game, learns well. His batting's come a long way too. So he likes to chip in with low order runs, and definitely see him playing lots for Australia in the future.
Yeah, excellent. They've also called up Victorian all-rounder Will Sutherland. So that's a good pick. I think he's a terrific prospect as well. But I'm most excited about the rooster, Jake Fraser McGurk, being called up. Did you have to bowl to him in the Big Bash?
Yeah, I did have to bowl to him in the Big Bash. Yeah, fearless, isn't he? Like, just fearless. Yeah, took it on. Nice position to come in and bat at 3 and play that way. And looks like he's backed by the Renegades to play that kind of role and backs himself to do it. And he was exciting. Some clean ball striking in there from a young player coming through. And obviously, Australian selectors have seen a lot in him. So we'll see how he goes.
He's got a beautiful bat swing. It's sort of, when he gets going, it's sort of between golf and cricket, the way he hits through the line and follows through. He's not a huge guy. I met him, interviewed him before the Big Bash at the launch, and he's not tall, he's not massive, but he hits them miles.
Clean bat swing, isn't it? It's quite still and stable through his bat swing, and hits square really well at Marvel. And just a good time with the ball. So yeah, he's an exciting prospect for sure.
Yeah, certainly add some spice to this one-day international series. See some of these youngsters perform. I will certainly be watching. And just last thing before we wrap this up, I mentioned on Sunday that in women's cricket, history was made 3 times on Sunday. It started off, the South Africans women team beat Australia for the first time ever. Friend of the show, Laura Vulvart, is the skipper now. And Australia made 6 for 142, but then Vulvart helped South Africa chase down the team. Vulvart was 58 not out. Tasman Bridge 41 not out. And I just think it's great for international cricket. I mean, not great for the Australian team to lose, but the fact that South Africa could never beat Australian white ball cricket, it's good that that's been overturned, because it just means it'll just adds more to the competition. And, I do think Australia in the women's team has come a little bit back to the pack since Meg Lanning retired. And I think that's expected. I mean, when you lose a giant of the game like Meg Lanning, it's going to leave a hole.
Especially as the captain too, right? Probably the best batter and your captain, like how much of a hole that would leave, definitely. So they'll rebuild a little bit under new leadership and get back to where they are. But as you said, there has to be that little bit of period where the new leadership might do it a little bit differently, or just find their feet, or feel the pressure a little bit of filling someone so good's shoes. So there'll be that period of adjustment.
Yeah, so that series is now locked at 1-1. We're recording this Tuesday afternoon, so it'll be played Tuesday night, the decider. But good competitive series there. And you can see South Africa is a women's team on the rise, led by Vulvart. So, yeah, great stuff. Well, that's it, Baze, for Cricket Unfiltered. Not quite as testing as the Big Bash coming on the podcast. What's the plan now for you?
Back into Queensland training. We have Shield games coming up, one-day games coming up, trying to finish the year well. There's club cricket involved as well. So finishing the year well, Manners, and then probably having a little bit of a break.
Oh, yeah, you got plans for the winter yet?
Not totally sure. We'll see. I was originally thinking I might go back to England. I'm not sure now. We'll wait and see if there's any deals that come up with that. Otherwise, I might take a little bit of a rest. I've had a few body issues this year, a few niggles, so I might need to get the feet up a little bit, play a bit of golf and relax.
Excellent. Well, James, thanks for joining me on Cricket Unfiltered. It was great to hear about your big bash. Congratulations. You made the last 3. Let's hope next season it's one better for the Strikers.
Absolutely.
Well, 2 better. Well, 1 game better, but 2 spots better.
Yeah.
We'll catch up soon. Thanks, everybody, for listening.